All right, let's just jump right in. So that big, scary penetration test report just landed on your desk. You know the one. It's dense, super technical, and honestly, it could be the thing that sinks your next huge enterprise deal. Well, in this explainer, we're going to tear that thing apart, demystify it, and turn that feeling of panic into a real actionable plan. And I mean, isn't that just the perfect way to put it? You spent real money on this thing. You did the right thing. But now you're staring at a document that feels like it's in a completely different language. It's a super common feeling, but don't worry. We're about to give you the subtitles. So here's the absolute biggest idea we need to get our heads around. It's a total mindset shift. Most people see a pen test report and think, okay, here's my bug checklist to go fix. But that's not what it is. What it really is a crime novel. It's the story, step by step, of how an attacker could break in and walk through your entire system. And that, right there, is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's not just about bugs, it's about the business. How do you spot those dangerous plot twists in the story before a potential customer security team does? Well, that's exactly what we're here to figure out. So, let's start with our first section. It's all about finding that hidden story. We're going to learn how to read for actual business impact, not just get hung up on some generic score. You know, this quote comes from a true story. A team was celebrating because their report came back with no criticals. High fives all around. But a few weeks later, a potential buyer's security team showed them how two of their little medium findings could be chained together to completely take over a user's account. And that's when the room got quiet. It's the perfect example of why just looking at the big, scary, critical bugs is a huge mistake. And that story just perfectly highlights the difference between severity and risk. See, the report gives you a severity score. It's a generic rating. But what you care about is risk. And risk is what that severity means in your world, with your production data and your customers. A medium issue on your login page is a way bigger deal than a critical on some old test server nobody uses. So to wrap up this first part, here's your new mindset. From now on, you're treating this report like an attacker's storyboard. You're hunting for the chain of events, not just the single scariest looking bug. For every single finding, you're going to ask, how does this touch production? How does this impact our customers? And you're going to turn every one of those findings into a real plan with a date on it. All right, so now that we're thinking like an attacker, let's get down to brass tacks. In this section, we're talking about the 7 types of findings that you, as a founder, absolutely cannot ignore. I don't care what the severity score says, these are always a big deal. Okay, here they are. And you can think of these as the greatest hits from every how on earth did this happen. We're talking about the big stuff. Account takeovers, privilege escalation, and oh yeah, the one that is a massive red flag for any enterprise buyer, multi-tenant crossover. You know, where an attacker can hop from one customer's data to another? Yeah. Anything you see on this list, it's got to be priority number 1. No questions asked. So how does this actually play out? Well, it almost never starts with some giant flashing red light. It's usually something small, something that might even be marked as low severity, like a tiny information leak that accidentally reveals an internal server name. Seems harmless, right? Well, that supposedly low leak gives an attacker the exact piece of information they need to pull off a medium-level attack, something called a server-side request forgery, or SSRF. You can think of it as giving the bad guy a special key to start wandering around inside your private network. And that is how it ends. By chaining those two seemingly smaller issues together, the attacker gets a full-blown critical breach. This is the story you have to be looking for. Seriously, 2 lows can make a critical is not just a clever saying. It's a very bad meaning you do not want to be in. Okay, so how do you actually spot these little problems that can turn into big ones? Easy. Hit Control F and search your report for these phrases. Words like unauthenticated, bypass, or retrieve any user's data. These are what we call risk accelerants. They basically make an attacker's job 10 times easier, so even if the severity is low, the actual risk is much, much higher. Okay, so you've found the red flags. Now what? You don't want to run around with your hair on fire. This next part is your triage toolkit. It's 5 simple questions to help you decide, is this a drop everything and fix it now panic, or is this something we can make a measured plan for? This checklist right here, this is going to be your best friend. Question 1, is it pre-authentication? Meaning, can anyone on the internet try this without logging in? That's bad. 2, is it reliable?
Can we actually make it happen every time? 3. Does it affect production? Because a problem in production is a problem right now. 4. Does it touch sensitive data? And finally, our favorite question, can it be chained with something else? The answers to these questions will instantly tell you what's on fire and what can wait.
So once you've figured out your priorities, it is time to act. And we're not just going to patch things randomly. We're going to use a simple 4-step plan, a remediation ladder that will actually build trust with your customers and their skeptical security teams. I want you to think of this like a ladder. You can't just jump to the top. First, you contain the problem. You stop the bleeding right away. Maybe you disable something or rotate a secret. Then you climb up and apply the real fix to the root cause. After that, you prevent it from ever happening again. You add some guardrails, some new automated tests, and finally, at the very top, you prove it. You get the evidence that shows the problem is gone for good. And here's why that ladder is so critical. Because for every single step on that ladder, there is a specific piece of proof that a savvy buyer is going to want to see. For containment, they want a change record. For the fix, they want to see the pull request. For prevention, they want to hear about new policies. And for proof, they want that official retest letter. This is how you change the conversation from just trust us to here is the evidence. Which brings us to our final and maybe most important piece of the puzzle, communication. How you talk about these findings and your plan can be just as important as the code you write. This is how you win trust and save the deal. So first, let's talk about what not to do. The fastest way to kill a deal is to start arguing about a severity rating, or making vague promises like, oh yeah, we'll get to that next quarter. To a security team, that just sounds like, we don't really have a plan. Hiding things, overpromising, it all just destroys their confidence in you. So instead, you're going to do this. You'll show up with a clear, risk-based plan that has names and dates attached to it. You're going to acknowledge the finding, and then you're going to confidently explain how you're fixing it at a systemic level. You're going to be honest and precise about what's done now versus what's just mitigated for the moment. This is how you project competence and control. And ultimately, this is the transformation we're aiming for. When you do all of this, when you read for impact, prioritize based on real risk, and communicate with an evidence-backed plan, you completely change the dynamic. You're no longer the defensive vendor just trying to say, it's fine. You become the partner they know runs a tight ship. So let's bring it all home. That report? It's probably sitting in your inbox right now, isn't it? So what's your first move? What are you going to do in the next 15 minutes? Here's what you're not going to do. You're not going to try and read all 40 pages. No way. Instead, I want you to scan for the top 3 findings that look like they could be chained together. Just 3. Then create a super simple tracker, assign an owner and a due date for each one, and just like that, you've already started turning that panic into a plan.